We are ready, sir.
Excellent. At this time, I will call to order the regularly scheduled committee meeting for the Village of Midlothian, Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020, at 7 p.m. Roll call, please. Clerk PULASKI.
Trustee Cagney?
Here.
Trustee Crowley?
Here.
Trustee Gillis? Here. Trustee Ivan?
Here.
Trustee Killelea?
Here.
Trustee Kreis?
Here.
Mayor LaRue?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we'll start off the meeting. We're going to have a presentation here from Kaja from MWD about the Crestwood 2 Bremen Township Phase 2 project. And we also have Superintendent Sperry here as well with his frozen picture. Kaja, would you like to start off, or Superintendent Sperry?
Is Joe Kratzer on the meeting or no? Joe Kratzer?
I see Matt from the engineering firm.
And Rich Fisher is on from the district.
Oh, Rich is here too.
Not Joe, because he's supposed to provide the
There's
presentation.
Joe's coming.
Joe trying to connect.
Okay.
Hi, Joe. Are you with us now?
Yeah, I am.
Hey. All right. We just started the meeting, and you guys are up first. So, Kaja, defer to you to start this presentation off.
Okay. Great. I'll share my screen in a minute. Just as a way of introducing MWRD to some of the folks that we haven't worked with before on other projects. My name is Joe Kratzer. I'm the managing engineer for the stormwater management section in the engineering department. And we've worked with some of the folks here in Midlothian on the Natalie Creek project most recently that's under construction. So I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with that. I wanted to, I guess, first just start by, thanking you for everybody's patience as we go through construction season. This is a project that has been that particular project has been a long time coming, and we'll be happy when all that work is done and we can move on to the next project. So, you guys have already met Kaja. He's a project engineer for both the Natalie Creek project and this new project. And then Rich Fisher is our principal engineer in the stormwater management section. Rich works on a lot of the projects like these. He also works on projects that involve flood-prone property acquisitions and stormwater master planning, among a number of other projects. So anyway, just quick introductions. I do want to ask, and I think you guys mostly, for the most part, know Matt Berger. Matt is with us tonight to kind of help explain the project elements. And then I'll jump back in a little bit later to talk about the project responsibilities that we're looking for, to share with both the Village of Crestwood, the Village of Midlothian, Bremen Township, and of course MWRD. So, do you guys care to say anything before we get started in our presentation, or do you just want us to jump in?
I would suggest you jump in, Joe, and then maybe have time for questions after the presentation. Does that sound fair?
That sounds perfect. So before I turn it over to Matt, I just wanted to reassure folks that are new to working with MWRD that we are committed to being a good partner for local municipalities. We want to leverage as many resources we can on these projects because we serve over 120 different communities across Cook County. And we can't do these projects on our own by ourselves across the county. As you guys know firsthand, flooding is a big problem. And it's not something that we wish we had a magic wand or a magic valve or something to make it all go away, but we unfortunately don't. So we really do appreciate all the assistance you guys can provide and have provided on past projects. With that, Matt, do you mind just kind of walking through the main project elements? And feel free, if you guys want to jump in, you can, but why don't we let Matt go through the presentation, and then we'll pause, see if you have any questions at that point, and then I can continue on with the rest of it.
Okay, sounds good. First question, I guess, is can everyone see the screen here?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I'm Matt Berger. I'm with Mott McDonald. Been working with Kaja and Joe and Rich on this project for a while here. And this is a little bit of an overview here of the Crestwood to Bremen Township preliminary engineering that was done for the stormwater project out there. So here's just a real quick overview of the project history. It started out very high level with the detailed watershed plan. Worked through, the project was originally split and now it was combined, which is, why how this project has progressed over the years. Just you can see right there with just a quick snapshot of how this thing has evolved throughout the project. The project location is essentially it's Midlothian Turnpike on the north, and then you got Central Avenue on the west, and then on the east you have just Laverne Avenue, and then to the south you have 151st Street. So it the majority of the project's located in Midlothian, village of Midlothian. A little bit is in Crestwood, and then a little bit is also in Bremen Township. So just real quick, over the years, there's been a quick change with the rainfall data. We all know that everything's, it's raining a lot more. Anytime it rains, it seems like it's exacerbated a lot more whenever you get a storm event. With that said, the storm criteria that we designed to is based on what's been studied over the course of the years, and what they found is stormwater volumes are going up. So they recently published new stormwater data, and we had to update everything to get it to that new standard. So you can see in several cases, I mean, the 100-year rainfall event, it went up almost an inch. So the design criteria now is a lot more stringent than it used to be, just recently. So, unfortunately, as Joe said, there's really no magic switch that we can ever just, flip and it takes care of stormwater drainage. At the downstream end, at Midlothian Turnpike, we have a boundary condition. It flows through a 53 by 83 inch elliptical pipe, eventually a 66 inch pipe, and then makes its way down Cicero Avenue all the way to the Cal-Sag. And that's kind of our limiting factor for the study area, because otherwise we'd have to rip up the entire road area. Plus you got other things coming in there, and those sewers are already very, very large to begin with. So that's kind of a boundary condition for this tributary that we have. So as we were going through this, we looked at all sorts of various alternatives, because usually there's either stormwater conveyance or there's detention. Those are the two kind of primary ways to address stormwater. So as we were looking at this, we found that there's a massive volume flowing through this, and what we had to do is we had to attenuate the peak a little bit for when the conditions got the worst, because that's how it was. Currently, it was spiking, and that's when you were getting the major concern. So we looked at a lot of different areas. You can see there's 11 here, and then combinations thereof all throughout this entire watershed here. So moving on to the findings. What we found is when we put in specific combination a certain group of these alternatives, we actually got very good results, and especially the results that you would want for the residential areas to really attenuate some of the impacts that they're getting from the stormwater. In Midlothian particularly, that would be right at the Bend right there, right off of Linder, just off the cul-de-sac of Maple. And then you can see we got the pond up north, right off of Linder Avenue, right here in 143rd Street. And then you got the pond right across, and that's actually, most of that's in Bremen Township. But further downstream, actually, we had a little bit of, we found that there's even a little improvement that could be made to actually help out the Billy Casper area too. And we found some significant results right there. So here's the 2-year. This is in its existing state. Things are starting to kind of spill over the banks a little bit in a 2-year storm, which is, it's really not able to contain a great deal to begin with. When you get to the proposed condition, we have things contained where they want to be. And when you see some of these volumes where it's a little bit more like right here, right over here, these are designed detention basins, and what they are is that were put in there. So you're seeing some water there. So it's not, we're flooding those areas, just so you know. Those are actually planned places to put the water, and you'll see that as a common theme. Now, the 2-year was actually probably one of the best ones. Right in the subdivision right there off of Linder Avenue in 143rd, you had decreases of a foot, over a foot for most of that residential area there, parallel to Linder Avenue and then Maple Lane too, right in between those two. And the results were really, really great right in that location for the elevation decrease. And that's what you see with the column that's in green. When we move into the 5-year storm, this was the existing condition. Things are starting to spill over. You're starting to see some more, and this is just based on terrain mapping that we do when we put this into the stormwater model. And what we had for our proposed condition is it's more contained. It's where we got the stormwater where we want it to be, and we're getting decreases of impacts. Now, when we broke it down into a water surface elevation, just to compare what the water surface would be, you're still getting improvements, particularly in the neighborhood of the Linder and Maple and 143rd area of about a foot. Further down at Billy Casper Lane, there's no increase right now on this one, but they actually get better benefits on some of the larger storms. Get to the 10-year, you can see things are spilling over. Crestwood's impacted there, just outside of the Midlothian on Laverne Avenue. You got some more spilling over here on the west side too. It's spilling all over in the golf course as well. Proposed, it's contained a little bit more. There's still some spillover in the golf course, but what we're actually finding is in the golf course itself, what you're having is you're getting improvements where the golf course is it's still dropping several inches throughout the entire golf course. So it's actually helping the conditions there. Billy Casper, we're still getting a little bit, we're getting 0 right there, but we're getting right at the adjacent to the golf course, we're getting drops of about 5 inches, which is great. So we get into the 25-year storm, and now you can see everything's really spilling out all over the place. Going to the proposed condition, it's more contained in the banks where we want it to be. Still spilling over a little bit in the golf course, but it's not having as great of an impact in the residential areas. And the decreases that we're getting throughout this area, we're actually getting better benefits here in the Billy Casper area when it comes to right by the, it's about a drop of about 6 inches actually now. And then when you get into the west side, right by 143rd and Linder, it's drops of about a foot. So the improvements are doing what we wanted them to do, is to mitigate some of the risk that you're getting. You break into the 50-year, and here's the existing conditions. Everything's spilling all over. Enough said with that. And when you get into the proposed conditions, we got it contained pretty well. The one spot that you see right here, this is actually, there's a culvert there, and that the part of the terrain isn't working the way we wanted it to. So it's showing a little bit more inundation right in this area, but that's actually not the case. When you get into the proposed conditions, you can see we're getting, when we start hitting the higher storm events, we're getting decreases all throughout the entire tributary, especially in the western part where it's entering off of Central Avenue in that residential neighborhood. And then when you get into by the Billy Casper area particularly, we're seeing drops of over 6 inches too. So that the water's not coming up as close to the townhouses that are there. And then when Crestwood, your neighbor, is also getting great benefits too for their residential area, drops of about a foot in some key spots where it's really causing great impact to the residential neighborhood. You get into the 100-year storm and you can see everything's flooded out pretty well throughout. And in the proposed condition, we got it pretty well contained to where we wanted it to be for some of the residential areas. And then you got some things in the golf course too, but you're still seeing improvements throughout the golf course of several inches of drop in water surface elevation. Billy Casper, again, 0.45. And then when you get into the Linder Avenue area, when you get just short of the detention basin there at 143rd and Linder, you're getting decreases of over a foot in the water surface elevation for this storm event. So here are some of the properties that would be impacted with this improvement. You have a few that are identified in Crestwood, a few in Bremen Township, and then you also have a few that are also in Midlothian. And the overall improvement for all the improvements throughout Crestwood, Bremen Township, and Midlothian, construction cost estimate is 3.4, just a hair under 3.5 million for those improvements to mitigate and provide that 1 foot of drop that we're having for most of the storm events. Now the benefits to Midlothian, as we were going through, and this is based on the inundation mapping that was done with the stormwater modeling, we're finding that there's quite a few roads that are protected based on what we're seeing with the stormwater model that's prepared, several structures, but really the biggest impact is actually to the nuisance that it's causing with the flooding, where it's coming up into the yards. It's going to actually mitigate and help out and reduce quite a bit of those throughout, where it won't get as high, because you're seeing drops in a lot of those residential areas of 6 inches to a foot. So that's where the greatest impact is actually benefited, and then also too on top of it the roads. Now I would like to also add too that with these improvements, what we're projecting is also too is it'll actually help out Midlothian Turnpike as well, because as we know right now, whenever it gets major storm events such as like one of the recent ones we just had here in May, you get water out there. So with these improvements, we have some proposed improvements also too right at the end, where tributary C is going to flow into the sewer system on Midlothian Turnpike, and we're not seeing the same amount of we're not seeing inundation like what's currently being experienced. And that is all I had for the presentation. So I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to help out and give you information on the project. And if you have any questions, my contact information is provided, and I'm more than happy to help you out with anything that you need.
Thank you, Matt. Joe, you want to go back to you?
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much, Matt. That was a great presentation, and you kind of went through the different elements of the project and the benefits. And I guess you probably said it, but I just want to reinforce the fact that this project came to us originally. We had studied this area in the detailed watershed plan, and very similar to Natalie Creek, there wasn't like a pronounced or obvious solution identified that we could act on at the time. But when we had called out to the communities back in 2014, 2015, we had heard from Bremen Township and Crestwood kind of at the same time that they had issues on this tributary right at 143rd and Linder and Midlothian Turnpike. And after we did some initial study on our side by MWRD on the upper portion near Central and 143rd, and I had identified some solutions there. We realized that really there wasn't enough that could be done to avoid just pushing the problem downstream. And then we quickly turned our attention to the fact that Crestwood was looking at doing the improvements on the downstream portion near Midlothian Turnpike, and realized that these things have to work together. There's been a number of different ideas investigated along the way. Matt, talked about what we've essentially settled on after, really probably going back to the DWP, probably over 10 years worth of different studies. And I think, thanks for putting that exhibit back up, Matt. I think you can see from the inundation maps that Matt walked us through, the flooding doesn't affect just one area along this tributary. It's all the way throughout. And what that means is that the solutions have to be distributed all throughout. So I was just going to walk through, Matt talked about the scope of work. Matt, if you wouldn't mind leaving that one open, that actually could be helpful in case I have to point to any specific elements of the project, and maybe with questions too. So what we had done is sat down with folks from the village of Midlothian and Crestwood and Bremen Township. These have most recently been virtual meetings, so we haven't had a chance to sit down across the table from everybody in a while, which is unfortunate. But we thought it would be a good idea to kind of lay out how we think this project could be completed. And any project that we work on, we always have an intergovernmental agreement. You guys are familiar with those, I'm sure. And it would just spell out the roles and responsibilities for it. So I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the roles and responsibilities for the district, Crestwood, the township, and then I'll focus a little bit more on the responsibilities as we see for the village of Midlothian. So the project is this $3.5 million project that Matt alluded to, with the various improvements in storage and conveyance along the way. There's parcels that are affected, meaning that we need land from different parcels or an assemblage of parcels. There's parcels that are benefiting in all these communities. So it's important to have kind of buy-in from all the stakeholders. And the district is committed to funding the construction of the project. So we had already done some of the preliminary engineering. Matt and his firm had done, on behalf of the village of Crestwood, some additional engineering, and we were able to kind of marry the two together. So the engineering is, there still needs some work to be done to finalize it, but there has been some considerable investment already by both the district and Crestwood. But again, we would be committed to funding the construction element of the project. What we had talked with in the past is that it would, the construction would be done by the designed and constructed by the village of Crestwood. Crestwood we've talked with Mayor Presta and Bill Graffio and others at the village, and they are committed to doing that. They'll have to go through and get permits, and they'll share the designs along the way with the other stakeholders to review to make sure that the project is going to be designed as intended. The village will also make sure to identify any utility conflicts along the way during the design process, and then we'll have to work with the individual jurisdictions to make sure that those can be resolved. Likewise, Bremen Township is going to have some role in this, although we acknowledge that they probably don't have, there's probably not that much of an impact or benefit to them as there is in the village of Crestwood or Midlothian. And we know that they have some fairly limited resources to put into this. So we're going to see what they can do. They've agreed to help out and do whatever they can. at least in principle, and we'll just have to see what it is that they can bring to the table. But so just specifically, I wanted to talk about the responsibilities for Midlothian. So what we were looking for is help with any right-of-way and easements on the project, and I'll get back to that in a little bit more specific. The village, of course, would have to take ownership of the improvements after they're constructed. And if there's any utility conflicts along the way, we would ask that the village assist in helping to resolve those. We do know, and I think Matt, I'm not sure if you touched on it today, but we do know that there are going to be some utility conflicts. And I think Joe Sperry and some of us, some of the other engineers have talked about those in more detail. I don't want to get into that level of detail tonight, but suffice to say, we are aware of some utility conflicts that will need to be resolved. The village will ultimately have to, maybe I mentioned this already, it would be responsible for owning and maintaining the project after it's built. And probably the most significant ask that we have today is for the village to assist in acquiring easements or land for the project, specifically at the area just east of Linder Avenue. It's labeled as like the Linder Avenue Pond. And I could try to share my screen. I'm going to give it a whirl here. Matt, can you stop sharing your screen? Thank you. And let me try it again.
And if you need the utilities, Joe, I do have that as well too, readily available.
Okay, maybe we'll save that for questions. Thank you. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so you guys are probably looking at a Word document. I've got two screens going on, so sorry if my gaze is not at the camera, but can you guys see my screen now? I'm scrolling up and down here.
Yes.
Yep, great. Okay, so how about now, this map?
Yep.
Okay, so we had identified, and I think, Matt, you may have another exhibit similar to this, but we had identified 4 parcels just east of Linder, north of the 143rd Street or Cottage Row right-of-way there. And those are currently vacant. The tributary runs through a couple of them, but we would need a little bit more area to expand for detention there. And I just went through today and looked at the values that the assessor has put on those parcels, and they total up. They're anywhere between 65,000 and 80,000. That's based on the assessor. We don't have an appraisal yet. I think that's something that we could try to work out. But the total of that is about $281,000. So it's significant, and we understand that that's a big ask. But considering the other investments that have been made by the district and Crestwood and other commitments to fund construction and design efforts, we feel it's reasonable to ask the village of Midlothian to help out with those acquisitions. And so that's I think what we wanted to present to the committee today, and we were happy to take any questions. We're happy to hear if there's any concerns, or if you would like us to provide any more information. So I will turn it back over to you, and I will leave my screen out here just in case people have questions about this, but we can go back and Matt could share his screen if you have any questions.
As we discussed in the last conference call, Joe, as you know, and we all know, we had to do the same thing with the Natalie Creek project with land acquisitions and stuff. So we're not strangers to this, and I'm sure we can figure out a way to make this happen. And Superintendent Sperry is pretty solid now with working with our utility partners and fixing any conflicts. So I love the idea. Anyone else on the board have any questions?
I do. Joe, this is Karen Price. And again, I think it's a good project. It was identified on page 26 of our Rain Ready plan, which the board adopted in January of 2016. Joe, you were involved in that Rain Ready plan back almost 4 years ago, 5 years ago with CNT. But as I'm looking at the pin with the value of $82,950 and the numbers are small, I think it's 309. It's the one in the, 009. Okay, so that one is not to be, according to the property impact summary, that is not to be acquired by Midlothian, but by Bremen Township. The way I also did what you did today, Joe, and I went to the assessor's website and looked at the values and looked at what was on these properties. So I think that one, 2804, 307, 009, if I'm reading that correct, is supposed to be acquired by Bremen Township.
You're probably correct. In fact, I noticed when I was sorry, I thought I was still muted. I noticed when I was looking earlier that that the boundary between Bremen Township and Midlothian kind of weaves around that parcel. So it looks like that may be in Bremen Township. And I think the house to the north of it, maybe it's in joint ownership. I don't know. But it looks like they have a structure that kind of straddles the property line. Not to say that it couldn't be moved or whatever, but I think, you may be correct. And Matt, I don't know, can you clarify that? Because in one of the summaries we had indicated that there was an existing easement potentially that would have to be, it said required. I wasn't sure that meant acquired, but we probably need to clarify that. Can you help with that, Matt?
Yeah, with respect to that, there are actually ComEd lines that are running right down the center of those properties there, 009 and 020. And Joe, based on the research we did over here too, 008 and 009 are actually the same owner. When we were out there doing some field work, Superintendent Sperry was met with me as we were walking through the area, just going through some of the existing conditions. And actually the property owner actually said, approached us about that property and just wanted to, talk about it. But anyway, those two are owned together. But there is a ComEd line, and I'm not sure if there's anything else that's on it, but that runs down the backyard there between the two parcels. So there's probably an easement there. And then actually the other property that we had identified was 5020 West 147th Street. And that is, I believe, right by, that is actually right by what the improvement that we're proposing, right by Billy Casper. And that's actually should be contained within an pre-existing easement. But it will probably require maybe just working out some kind of access with the golf course.
Excellent. Any other questions from the board?
Yes, this is Kathy Caveney speaking. I just had a couple questions. On the presentation from Matt, he showed how many properties were going to be impacted by this. And unless I misread the chart showed that only 9 properties were going to be impacted and 4 of them were in Midlothian. I mean, we're going to have a positive impact? Is that true?
That was on, you had, and Matt, we had Kathy, if you don't mind jumping in, that was the one question I had as well. That we were provided with the presentation, and that slide was not in our presentation, and it said benefits to the village of Midlothian, and that was going to be my question as to how many structures are going to be impacted in Midlothian. So could you pull that slide back up?
Yes.
At the end of at the very end of the presentation.
Right.
While Matt's doing that, Kathy, I think to clarify, there were 2 slides. One indicated the projects that would be impacted, And I think, Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that meant that the projects that would be impacted in terms of the construction. And the other slide that Karen was referring to that Matt just brought up, these are the benefiting properties or structures.
Yes, that's correct, Joe.
Does that make sense, Kathy?
Okay, it was I believe it was a screen, it was a slide that was before this one, but keep this one for a moment. Was this in our packet that was emailed to us?
No.
No.
Can you guys share with us these screens that we're looking at now?
Sure.
After the meeting's over, can you please email all of these to us?
Yes, I'll repackage it up as a PDF and resend it over to you.
Thank you. So,
Joe, do you want me to send it to you first and Kaja?
No, just send it out to the whole group. That'd be fine.
Okay.
okay, so on this, just to be clear, you've got it broken down a 10-year, 25-year, 50-year, 100-year storm event, and then the very bottom line shows the number of properties where nuisance flooding is going to be reduced. And it goes from 29 properties up to 48 properties, depending on the storm event.
Correct.
Right. Okay. And then what was the slide prior to this that I was referring to?
That one was the acquisition.
No, then maybe it was a slide afterwards. There was a slide that showed, it was the slide, I believe, that showed the $3.4 million cost. And it showed that you had a list of 9 properties and 4 of them were in Midlothian. So are those the properties that are directly going to be impacted positively by this project?
What is on the screen right now is the summary of cost estimate that was based on what the anticipated construction value is for the project. The previous one that you see here this is where land might be required in order to construct those improvements. The cost that you have here does not factor in because that would require an appraisal, and that's not something that that we do. So this is strictly construction costs that you see right here.
Okay, then maybe I misunderstood that slide and it went by too fast because I thought that I had seen that 9 properties were going to, on one of the slides, that 9 properties were going to be affected.
I think that was the previous slide that you just showed, and if I understand correctly, what you're saying is those 9 properties were ones that were identified that we would need to either acquire or get access to. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah. These are the ones that are, where we need to work with the property owner in order to construct the improvements.
Right, and the improvements will be constructed on these properties, and a number of these properties, as I read through, would be converted into green space.
And they are all vacant, the ones in Midlothian, correct?
Actually, I think that would have to be verified, because when I went to the assessor's website today, one of the properties, which is the one on Linder, 14279 Linder, it indicates that it has a residential garage. Now, I think we would have to verify that. I don't know how updated the assessor's information is.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. The 3 properties that Midlothian is required to acquire for this project, do we know if they're vacant or we don't know? We don't know if they're occupied or vacant?
He showed the pictures where they were vacant. One in the top left corner looks like it has something encroaching into the pin 009. But as Trustee Christ said, 009 appears to be Bremen Township, and that was something that Superintendent Sperry had identified early on, that some of the stuff was not Midlothian.
Okay, but the other 3 that are in Midlothian, do we know if they're vacant?
It appears to be vacant. You saw the picture, the arrow shot of the 4 pins.
Oh, but Gary, I couldn't tell if they're vacant or not because the way it was shaded, it couldn't even tell if there was a structure on there.
Oh, I thought Matt said that they're vacant except for the one in the top left corner had something encroaching on it.
Okay.
Yeah, we focused on the properties that did not have residences on them, so that way it would really minimize the impact to the residents of any community.
Just two more quick questions. Did I understand properly when you were showing the screen that showed the whole project area that included the country club? Is some of the conveyance or retention or detention going to be done on country club property?
This one right here?
I think so. I think that was it.
Yeah, there's no improvements that are going on through the Midlothian Country Club property. The only one that would actually truly have an impact would actually be right at Country Club Drive. We have a stream improvement, and what we found is you see right here in this location, you can see my cursor.
Yes.
It is, there's those bends right there, and by widening out the banks, we can actually provide for this whole stretch decreases and water elevation drops of about 6 inches on average for most storm events, all the way up to the 100-year storm, in order to actually help alleviate some of the concerns that the residents are experiencing there with water in their backyards.
Okay, and then the 4 properties that we just discussed that need to be acquired, 3 by Midlothian and 1 by Bremen Township, those are to be green spaces only, and those will not have any retention or detention features on them?
Those would be green features that would be detention ponds, offline detention ponds, because we're not allowed to put in, per Army Corps regulations, a inline detention basin. So what it would be is it would be a dry detention pond most of the time. When you get those storm events, it would trigger it to fill up, and then that way it would provide relief downstream, but also too it also provides a relief upstream in the residential area too, by detaining some of the water there and then slowing down the release. So it'll actually allow us for better flow of the tributary.
Okay, and then the last question. So the district is going to fund this project. However, Crestwood has agreed to take the lead to actually construct it. So they're going to take the lead, and they're going to work with the engineers and develop all the design drawings, share them with the village and share them with the township and MWRD, and get MWRD and Army Corps' approval for everything. And they're going to build it.
That's the plan. Yeah, we kind of approached the 3 parties to see what each could bring to the table. And Mayor Presto was kind enough to step up and offer to take on the responsibility for design and construction, and actually building the project. What we will do, just like we would if the district was taking that role, the IGA will have the same terms and conditions, whereas we would, each of the parties would review design submittals at certain milestones, provide comments and feedback. We would, each have different roles throughout that process to make sure that the improvements are going to be worked into the construction documents as intended. And when the project goes to construction phase, the Village of Crestwood could manage it as a single project and kind of have more efficiencies in terms of running one contract as opposed to multiple contracts, which could lead to coordination issues. I should step back and just note that the district, we had been looking at doing the elements, some of the elements in the Central Avenue to Linder Avenue stretch there as a district project. But we really, like I said earlier, realized that it could not be done on its own because you really just were going to push the problem downstream. And as it turned out, Crestwood was already designing a project in that downstream portion. And we thought that this was a natural marriage of the 2 projects. And again, we really need the local communities to assist us in these projects to be able to stretch our dollars.
That's fine.
Thank you, Joe. Any other questions from the board?
Yes, I have, just, I guess it would be one question. So, I think you obviously will have to get permitting from, USACE, and how about IDNR as well?
Yep. In fact, we had asked Matt to do the updated modeling because we know that IDNRs are going to require that. So the model has been updated with the latest rainfall data already. The permitting, there will be some construction in the floodway, so it'll require a flood permit. We hadn't yet gotten to the point of figuring out like what it would do to the regulatory floodplain. But that is something that, as you know, on Natalie Creek, you know, we don't necessarily just dwell on can we get people out of the floodplain. We really just want to provide that stormwater benefit. And sometimes, you know, we can provide benefits at a 100-year event like here, and other times, you know, we can't achieve full 100-year protection. But it would be permitted by DNR, Army Corps, IPA. I'm trying to guess it. Is Midlothian Turnpike County? So any other jurisdictions that we cross, we will make sure that all the permits are required. And Midlothian as the design, Crestwood as the design lead would take the lead on those.
And then one final question, and it would probably just be a guess, your best guess. Once everything's in place, all of the engineering is completed and we have the permitting, how long for construction?
I would probably take a guess after the project is advertised and bid and awarded. The construction could probably be done in, I would say, 18 months. There are, you know, some tight quarters to work in, especially back near Maple Lane. Is that what it's called? Maple Lane by the pond, and then in between the homes on Linder and Maple. The other areas are not too bad, but my guess is it would be at least an 18-month, maybe a 24-month contract. Matt, I don't know if you'd probably done a little bit of guesstimating in that terms when you were doing your cost estimate.
Yeah, we were thinking that, a contractor, if they were to go aggressive with it, you know, they could probably do it in less than 18 months, but 18 months was pretty much what we were kind of factoring in as we were going through this, assuming that, you know, right after it went out to bid, because then you also have the stabilization too. And then there's going to be probably a monitoring component too, I would imagine, depending on what comes back, if there's like wetlands that are required for restabilization. Then you got like a monitoring component of it too, so you'll still see a little bit of activity with that, dragging out maybe in a couple of seasons. But 18 months is probably what you're looking at.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, I have one last question, please. This is Kathy Caveney again. In the same vein as what's happening with Natalie Creek, at the end of the Natalie Creek project, MWRD is going to do a LOMA to see how our flood plains are affected by the Natalie Creek project. So after this project is done, will MWRD do a LOMA on this project as well to see what the impact has been to all the homes that are in floodplains in the floodway?
Yeah, that's a good question. We really hadn't factored that in at this point, but you know, we've been talking with the Illinois State Water Survey, who handles the LOMARs and LOMAs, and they have, they've indicated that if, modeling is done in conjunction with a project, that they may or may not, like actually sometimes DNR will require that a LOMAR is done. They have said because of the new Bolton 75 rainfall data, they know that there's quite a bit of remapping that needs to be done. What we want to be careful with, and this actually came up on Natalie Creek and some other projects that had been previously permitted before Bolton 75 came out.
I'm sorry, Joe, I didn't hear what you said before. What came out?
Before Bulletin 75, which is the new rainfall data, that IDNR has accepted as the latest rainfall data to use for modeling in floodplain mapping. We want to be careful not to box ourselves in, because we have seen some cases where a project was permitted under the previous Bulletin 71 rainfall data. And after the project was constructed, if a LOMAR was done using new Bulletin 75 rainfall data, it may not take quite as many homes out of the floodplain as we thought. So we probably should give that a little bit more thought, Kathy. And what I would say is that if we determined that there was going to be a benefit to doing the LOMAR, I think the MWD could probably take on that role after the construction. And that is typically when you would do this. What we want to kind of focus on is that we know that because of the modeling with Bolton 75 rainfall, with the existing conditions versus the proposed conditions, there is definitely a benefit. So I would say we could probably determine a little bit further on down the road if a LOMAR is appropriate for this.
And then can we include that language in our IGA?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
I
Joe.
actually have one question, sorry. I realized that there were, quite some time ago, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, this project was discussed at our board meeting, or at a couple of the board meetings, and I did try to find my notes on that or the information, and I couldn't. From my recollection, I was under the impression back then that one of the concerns was that there were not many homes in Midlothian that would be impacted. But now it seems like that number has gotten a lot bigger. What have you guys changed to have that happen?
I would say probably most of that is attributed to the new rainfall data.
Okay, so the project hasn't changed, just the data.
Yeah, the project has also changed to accommodate the new rainfall data. But yeah, in the detailed watershed plan, when we didn't have this new data, there were, I think, fewer structures impacted by the flooding. But it was enough for us to look at it. Now with the new rainfall data, we're seeing that there are quite a few more structures, and even the same ones that were inundated before, they're inundated at a more frequent storm event. And when you get to the higher events, like a 100-year event, they're inundated more. There's more depth of flooding. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
All right, Joe, you want to work with Superintendent Sperry and myself on the next steps and for the Village of Midlothian, and so we can get things on the agenda and move forward.
That'd be great. And we'll coordinate that effort with the Village of Crestwood and Bremen Township. We'll probably be making a similar type of presentation to some township officials. We've talked with Crestwood folks, so things are starting to take shape, and I think what we would like to do is go to our board sometime early in the first quarter of 2021 to get approval to enter into this IGA with the three parties. I guess it's four parties altogether, and get this project rolling. So we appreciate you having us tonight, and we'll send you the follow-up slides just so you have everything. And if you have any other questions, feel free to let us know. But we'll reach out to Superintendent Sperry and you, Mayor, to set up the next steps.
Excellent, Joe. Thank you so much. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Enjoy the rest of the meeting.
MWRD
Thank you.
and Matt.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt.
All right, we will move on to the rest of our meeting. Before I do, I've got to remember to say, I declare that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the coronavirus pandemic.
And Mayor, I have confirmed you have a quorum based on audio or visual confirmation.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Clerk PULASKI, was there any comment from the public?
No, there was none.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to trustee business, trustee Price.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one update on Keep Midlothian Beautiful this evening. On November 19th, I participated in the a Keep Illinois Beautiful conference call, and all the affiliates in the state of Illinois were on. And I'm just really happy that during the pandemic, many of the affiliates have not been able to do much of anything, and they were really impressed when I reported on our October 3rd recycle event. And as a result of that, I am now on the Keep Illinois Beautiful board. And that's all I have.
Excellent. All right, thank you. And trustee Ivan?
I have nothing to report today.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Gillis?
Gary, you're on mute.
Mute.
I have nothing else, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Caveney?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to report that the building department is continuing to be extremely busy with permits and processing permits that they've received from residents for, and all of these permits are not just storm-related permits from the August tornado. So our village property owners are continuing to move forward with improving their properties. So that's good to see. And the building department is also very busy with getting out the business application renewals for next year for business licenses. And that's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. Trustee Killey?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Crowley?
Thank you, sir. Just a couple things. First of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about our Masks for Midlothian program that has been going on since pretty much, since we've been able to acquire masks for our residents. We've done a little bit of redesigning with it. We are going to continue with the program. However, to make it a little easier for residents, we're going to go to a once a month schedule. And they will get, instead of every 2 weeks, they'll get double the amount so that they only have to come out and do the drive-through once a month during the cold weather. So that in your next email will be a once a month pickup during the cold months. It will be a drive-through, but the location may be closer to the village hall so that the employees that partake in it can have some shelter if it's raining or snowing or too cold. Next, I wanted to just talk a little bit about a couple of programs that are going on in the village and just thank a few people. One of our cadets that graduated from the police cadet program, Dylan Glusek, has run an annual food drive. I believe this is the 3rd year or the 4th year. He does his kickoff kind of with the lighting of his Christmas tree and all of his Christmas decorations. That was done this past weekend on Sunday at 5 o'clock. It was a huge success. I'm waiting for the final number, but I know just in food when I was there, as I was following it, he collected about 2,000 pounds, and Zabo Plumbing had offered to double all of the food collected that day. So it was a great turnout. He had a lot of people, and he got off to a really good start. So I wanted to personally thank Zabo Plumbing for contributing, and everyone who came out and contributed. And he will be collecting food, which will benefit our food pantries through December 31st. There is a bin outside of his home. You can check him out on Facebook. Where you can drop off. It's complete isolation. There's social distancing, no contacting anybody else. You can just drop it and go. He also will be selling t-shirts again this year. I expect them to be around the $20 range. He's going to let me know, so if anybody wants those, please get me your sizes and I'll let you know when they come in. Next, I just wanted to mention the CPC.
Sandy, could I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Zabel Plumbing, there's multiple Zabel Plumbings. Can you?
I'm sorry, Kevin Zabel Plumbing.
Kevin Zabel Plumbing, okay.
Sorry, I apologize.
Kevin Zabel Jr. Plumbing.
Junior Plumbing, correct.
Thank you.
So, with regard to the toy drive, we are in full swing for the toy drive. This year, more than any year, I think the CPC is really trying to get as many toys as possible. We've definitely seen an increase in need for the toys, you know, with the pandemic and everything. At this point, you know, they are collecting, so if you're interested in donating, there is a list on the CPC website, also on the village webpage on where you can donate toys. Every little bit helps. And I thought it was it was very nice today to see, I saw a post that I shared, and I believe a number of other people shared. Reese Flannery, a 9-year-old little girl, has committed to filling the box at Durbin's with toys. So she has went out and raised enough money to fill the entire box with toys. So I had a conversation with her mom today, and I just want to thank her personally too, because she's definitely an inspiration. And I think that I hope everybody else that can participate does. And the only other thing I have is that the police department, we are meeting and moving forward with our public safety facility. And I should have an update for the board with some additional design and information, hopefully within the next 5 to 7 days that I'll be sharing. But we've also, I've talked to Chief Delaney and with a lot of the feedback that we've both gotten, as well as the rest of the department, the police department is going to try their hand at a quarterly public safety newsletter. It is already in draft form. We will be finalizing that in the next couple of weeks. It will be available electronically. And some of the things that we are planning on having in that newsletter is we will have regular updates about the public safety building, including a survey for residents to be able to have input on it. We plan to have some crime information. We plan to have event information, legislative updates, things that people will be able to click on and view. To keep costs in line, we will be doing it, like I said, electronically, but we will be emailing it to, we will collect emails, and anybody who wants to receive it by email, we will be sending by email. I will keep everybody updated on that, and that's all I have tonight, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Two things. The department had a meeting today. Chief Delaney also made us aware that they are putting together a survey monkey for residents to give their input also on the design of the public safety facility. And
yes, it'll be in the newsletter, sir.
Okay. And I was able to make Dylan's event on Sunday and drop off some food. He is a wonderful human being, a example to so many people, and he's just a wonderful person. But I did notice when I was out there, the street, that block there looks a little dark, so I talked to Superintendent Sperry today at our department head meeting to look into getting an extra street light on that block, 147th Place. So thank you.
Oh, you know, and I have to agree with you, sir, that, you know, he really is, he's you see giving throughout the community, and he's always involved. And anybody who was there on Sunday knows that he is very stylish. That's all I have to say.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Attorney Valdez?
Just the 5-minute update on litigation that I promised from last week to be done in closed session. That's all I have.
All right. And the only thing under my business, update on our tax increment financing district. We had our reconvening of the joint review board yesterday. School District 228 had some questions that needed some follow-up answering. They were answered as best as could be, and the board took a vote on a recommendation. It was 6 yeses and 2 abstains to recommend to the Village Board of Midlothian to move forward with the TIF. So that's good news. Next steps is the public hearing on the 16th of December at 6 o'clock. And then if that goes well, then we will get the ordinances on the agenda for approval for or right after the new year. So that's my update.
Mayor,
Yes.
will that be on Zoom?
Clerk Moskal has graciously agreed to set up a Zoom public hearing for us, so we will get that information out to everyone as soon as we can.
Thank you.
That's it. Clerk Moskal?
Nothing tonight, sir.
Thank you, sir. Then
Mayor?
Yeah.
Before, I just have one thing. I did want to remind everybody that this week is Bremen High School's food drive as well. So their food drive ends this Saturday with their Fill the Bus event. High school students walked around on Monday and left grocery bags on a number of doorsteps throughout the community. However, if you're not able to fill your bag and deliver it to one of the drop-off spots, you can bring it to their Fill the Bus event on Saturday at the high school, or you can go online. They have a link to a GoFundMe page where you can make a monetary donation if you are not able to or don't feel comfortable with making an actual food donation in person. I believe that I've shared their flyer on my Facebook page and I tagged all of you, and I believe it's also on the village's Facebook page, but if we could all go back and reshare that information with all of our Facebook friends and throughout the community, that would be great. I don't know how many people are aware, but this Bremen food drive, in addition to Dylan's, both of these food drives support both of the food pantries here in town, the St. Vincent de Paul at St. Chris and also St. Stephen's Lutheran Church. And both of those food pantries rely heavily on both of these food drives. So it's pretty important to our community to help those who are less fortunate. That's all I get.
Thank you. At this time, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to closed session to discuss litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of a particular public body has been filed or is pending before a court.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Trustee Cavney made the motion and Trustee Christ made the second, I believe. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. All opposed? All right, we are in closed session.